Hello everyone and welcome back to Learning for Fun. In this series, Math for Fun, we teach you tips and tricks to make math easier. In today's video, we will be learning about the concept of the factorial. Before we find out what factorials are, let's go over the answers to the previous video's follow-up questions. The first one was, are the following numbers perfect, abundant, or deficit? So in this case, 112 is an abundant number, 496 is a perfect number, and 49 is a deficit number. Now, if you don't know how we got that, or if you want to review these concepts, you can go back and watch the previous video. For the second question, how many primes are abundant? Well, that's just 0. There are no primes that are also abundant numbers. So let's get on with factorials. So let's start off by going over what is the definition of a factorial. A factorial of a natural number n is the product of all the natural numbers less than or equal to n. We can write it in the notation of an exclamation mark. So we can also write this as n times n minus 1 times n minus 2 and so on till it's times 2 and then times 1. So all of this stuff right here, this is the factorial of n, and this is the same way as writing the definition, where it's the product of all the natural numbers less than or equal to n. Remember, natural numbers are just another word for positive integers. Now let's go over a few examples. Okay, so here are a few simple examples before we move on to harder questions. So what is 1 factorial? Well, there are no natural numbers that are less than 1, so 1 factorial is just 1. And now 2 factorial. Well, 2 factorial has one natural number less than 2, and that's just 1. So this would be 2 times 1, which is equal to 2. And now 3 factorial. 3 factorial is just 3 times 2 times 1. Same with 4 factorial. 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And then 5 factorial is just 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Now notice I didn't write the answer here, because if we know the previous factorial from the number that we're trying to find out, then we can easily find this factorial. For example, 3 factorial is just 3 times 2 factorial, and the answer is just 6, because 3 times 2. 4 factorial is just 4 times 3 factorial, and we already know 3 factorial to be 6, so it's just 24. And then 5 factorial is just 5 times 4 factorial, and 4 factorial is 24, so 5 factorial is 120. Let's see if we can make a formula out of this. So the formula that we're going to make out of this is, let's just think intuitively first about what we're doing here. We're finding n factorial, and we're trying to make a formula where if we know the previous number's factorial, we can find this one. So we can just say n factorial equals n minus 1 factorial, because that's just the previous number, times n, which is the same n as here. So if we know the previous number, then we only have to multiply it by one number instead of have to go through all of that math just to find that one number. Now we can just multiply it once, and it's as easy as that. So now let's move on to some more difficult questions. So this is our first difficult question that we're going to do. Simplify 101 factorial over 100 factorial. Now this may seem difficult when you first look at it, but you just have to remember the concept that we just learned. So we know that 101 factorial is just 101 times 100 times 99 times 98 and so on. And in the same way, 100 is just 100 times 99 times 98 times 97 and so on. So we can just write it like this. 101 factorial can be written as 101 times 100 factorial. And we can just keep 100 and 100 factorial on the bottom, and we can just cancel out the two 100 factorials, and we're just left with 101. Now this is a really simple trick to solve these types of problems. Let's move on to another difficult question. So now in this problem, we have to find the value of n in this equation. N times 5 factorial equals 5 factorial plus 6 factorial. Now we could solve this problem by just calculating each of the factorials, but that would bring up large numbers, and in other problems with even higher factorials, that would be very difficult. So let's try to find a simpler way. Let's see if we can just use the same thing that we did before, because 5 factorial and 6 factorial are just one number apart. So let's try that out. N times 5 factorial equals, well, 6 factorial is just 6 times 5 factorial, so we can use the distributive property to write it as 5 factorial times 6 plus 1. And then we can just divide both sides by 5 factorial, and we're left with n equals 6 plus 1, which equals 7. And that's our answer. Now for the follow-up questions. So here are today's follow-up questions. What is the highest power of 2 that divides evenly into 30 factorial? What is the prime factorization of 10 factorial? And what is the smallest factorial that has 3 zeros at its end? Make sure to post the answers in the comments, and we'll explain these questions next time. And remember, this is the channel where we teach you magic tricks with an X to make math easier. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.